The post is titled, "I cheated and emotionally abused my husband for years. We're now getting divorced. My D-Day was around 3 years ago. I confessed to it, but only after facing psychosis and a complete nervous breakdown. I feel the need to tell my story to someone unfiltered, and I plan to delete this after a few days. I hope that is accepted in this subreddit. I had been emotionally abusive towards my husband for years. I also had an affair going on and off, using his own trust against him, which I believe was yet another form of abuse. He was still incredibly loving towards me until there came a day that I simply went too far and said something so absolutely disgusting and vile that I wish I had choked on my own blood before saying it. For the first time, he lost his cool completely and retaliated, saying he would divorce me. He asked me to pack my bags, and I complied because I was scared of him. He made me sit in the car, then he drove me to my parents' home, left me at their doorstep, and left. I didn't know where to go and didn't have the courage to face my parents, so I booked a hotel room. I couldn't even comprehend what was happening to me. I had no knowledge of how to cope with this sudden change in my life. If I had known that I needed a therapist, none of this would have happened in the first place. So I did the only thing that I knew brings some temporary respite and numbness from the pain and that choking feeling in my throat. I self-harmed. It did not work as it always did. I hurt myself more and more until I ended up losing a finger. I passed out and woke up in a hospital cabin with my husband by my side. By the way he looked at me with pure disgust and hatred in his eyes, I knew he didn't want to be there. That was all it took to make me completely unravel. And I told him right then and there that I'd realized I'd been abusive towards him and that I'd do anything to make it right. I surprised myself when I said that. I still don't know how that works, but my previous therapist and I had a working theory that I was in denial that I could be an abuser, and so even though deep down I knew I was being abusive, I never dared to admit that to myself, even in my own thoughts. But the realization that my actions had made my husband hate me broke all those mental barriers I had set up, and I could finally see things with clarity. I also confessed to my affair right there. He only responded that he knew. I had left my PC at his house and he accessed my personal cloud drive, presumably to find evidence of my abusive actions to use against me in divorce, and ended up finding a lot more. He said there was no chance that we could be together ever again. While leaving, he said I should inform my parents and spend some time working on my unstable mental health. I did as he said. I spent 4 months in a psychiatric hospital under constant special supervision because I tended to hurt myself under isolation. I was diagnosed with rapid cycling bipolar disorder, dissociative identity disorder, and severe PTSD from unaddressed childhood trauma. It physically hurt to not be close to my husband. Like an organ or a part of my body was ripped out. I later learned it was unhealthy dependency and not love. Through years of trying to understand how I could have done everything I did, I arrived at the conclusion that I did love my husband at some point when we first met and married, but then my unresolved issues made me withdraw and turn me abusive. I hated him for absolutely no reason. I never believed he actually could love me as much as he professed. My affair was a way to self-sabotage. I had such low confidence and it was so unbelievable to me that someone could actually love me that much, that I assumed it was all a lie. And so I did everything to push him away. It's not that I fell out of love with him, I was simply incapable of loving anybody and anything, including myself because of my diseases. I was very close to insanity. It would take me more than a year of work on myself to finally gain a healthy understanding of love and re-educate myself in relationships. But I didn't have that knowledge back then and mistook my yearning for my husband as love. As soon as I was stable enough to leave my ward, I tried to find out how my husband was doing. He had still not filed for divorce. I selfishly tried to contact him, but he shut me down. I devoted the next few months to doing my best to see how I treated him from his perspective, developing empathy for him, and making sure to maintain NC so he could heal from what I'd done to him. I did realize the best thing I could do was leave him the f alone, and I did. But I took the fact that I had not yet received any divorce papers as proof that he wanted me to be a better person, and if I did, he would come back to me. I was hoping for a miracle, but I'm glad I was able to maintain NC through all of it. I also self-reported myself as an emotional abuser, but only the victim can press charges. I no longer had self-harming thoughts. I gave up alcohol completely. I told my parents everything, and contrary to the indifference indifference and isolation I was expecting, they instead showed me love and support. I even gained enough confidence to take the leap of faith and confess about a certain incident that happened during my childhood that I didn't think I'd ever have the courage to tell my parents about. I regretted my affair with every shred of my soul. I made wrong choices and had shitty boundaries. While all this was happening, I never received any notification of divorce proceedings. I used to dread checking my email. Whenever a letter arrived or the doorbell rang, it sent a shiver up my spine. But nothing happened. He contacted me after 2 years of breaking up. The miracle I was expecting turned out to be true. He really did come back. But he was a shell of a man compared to before. The years of emotional trauma I had inflicted upon him made him an alcoholic and a social recluse. In his isolation, he had come to believe the things I had said about him. To say I hated myself for what I'd done would be an understatement. He let me back into his life, in his house, and in his bed. I attempted to give some agency back to him. I listened to him, gave him personal space, never argued with him. I wrote a signed confessional letter admitting to emotional abuse and infidelity that he could use against me if he desired. I also kept trying to nudge him to go to therapy until he budged and enrolled for a weekly session. Slowly, he started recovering. He started going to the gym again and talking to more people. As he slowly started dealing with his trauma, my affair too came into the limelight of our conversations. He suffered from inadequacy for a long time. I offered my perspective, which he found hard to trust for obvious reasons. I never lied again, took 100% ownership of my affair, and listened to him vent. This went on for more than half a year. Through all of this, it was never really clear if we were reconciling or not. My focus was completely on helping him heal and recover from the emotional abuse I had inflicted on him and the trauma from my affair. I did want him back, but I also didn't want to force anything on him. Through my discussions with my own therapist, I got to know that victims of abuse often find it hard to let go of their abusers. Such people will often feel powerless in front of the person who abused them. That knowledge made my situation even more confusing. I didn't know if he let me back into his life because he truly wanted to try, or because as a victim of my abuse, he found it hard to let me go. This brings me to the present. I knew I needed to have this conversation with him sooner or later. I mustered every grain of courage I had in my soul and asked him if he wanted to reconcile. This was last week. It was the most vulnerable conversation I have ever had with him or anyone else. I had turned into a pool of tears by the time we finished, but basically, we came to the conclusion that he cannot be sure he truly wants to try reconciling or not. He still feels love towards me, but he doesn't know if it's real or just a side effect of the trauma I inflicted on him, so he asked that we separate peacefully. Deep down in my heart, I knew this was coming. We had conversations about divorcing, about our expectations from each other after separation. I explored the possibility of reconnecting after a few years, even just as friends. He turned it down, and I accepted it without question. For a long time, I felt nothing but numbness. The news took its time to sink in. I moved a week later. I'm only going to see him a handful of times again, and all of them in the presence of a lawyer. I sheepishly said goodbye when I stepped out the door. He showed me enough grace to smile and wave back. Only after I moved out did it finally sink in. Ever since, I cry every night. I suspect it's going to take me a few more days to grasp that this is it. I'm really, this time truly, losing the love of my life. I would have done anything. He's the best thing that ever happened to me by far. Nothing even comes close. The knowledge that it is all my fault, that I have no one to blame for this but myself, makes it worse. I don't know if I'll ever stop feeling this raging fire of hatred towards myself. I'm sure he's suffering as well, all because of me. He didn't deserve any of this. It will take him years to recover. He'll probably keep waking up screaming for a long time. He'll probably still hear my disgusting words ring in his head for a long time. And he'll probably always feel like I chose someone else over him. Neither of those was true. I'm back at my parents' house. My siblings have been trying to cheer me up, but it's hard not to hate myself right now. After almost a year, I've started having self-harming thoughts again. I feel like I have lost all purpose in my life. I was so focused on improving myself before because there was the slightest chance of him coming back. But what is even the point now? I have lost so much. Such a great person, such an amazing bond. I don't want anything else from life. I don't know how he is doing. I don't deserve to. I've been doing everything possible possible to make absolutely sure that I do not end up breaking NC in a moment of weakness. I know I won't, but I never know when one of my diseases might resurface. I hate that this is who I am. I hate that I have such a latent potential for destruction and complete selfishness. I hate that I have to keep this demon inside me in check at all times. I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be infested with these mental illnesses. I wish every day that I woke up in someone else's body. And above everything else, I wish my issues were only limited to me. I wish they did not hurt other people around me as well. Why did he have to get hurt when those were my issues, my mental diseases? I should have been the one suffering. I should have been hurting, not him. I have vivid dreams about someone choking me in my sleep, or a truck driving over me. I don't even bother with trying not to cry anymore. I just go about my day while the tears keep flowing. I know I need to live. Back when I self-harmed and lost a finger, I promised him when he met me in the cabin that I would not kill myself. Every time I think of ending things, I remember that promise. I know that if I die, he will blame himself. I also remember the tears and concern on the faces of everyone else. My parents, my brothers, their wives. I don't want to inflict any further trauma on him, or any one of them. I have done enough already. I try to be present for my parents and my siblings. They care deeply for me and try to cheer me up. I don't think I have the capacity to be cheered up anymore. The best I can do is put on a happy face so I don't bring down the moods of people close to me. Once the divorce is done, I have resolved to admit myself back under supervised psychiatric care so I don't end up self-harming again. Thank you, whoever you are, for reading this till the end. Obviously, OP is garbage. She does seem to have some mental issues, but that is far from an excuse for cheating or the way she strung along her partner. I don't condone self-harm, but what I will say is that I find it satisfying that she finally realizes how badly she fucked up. The part about how she couldn't work up the nerve to face her parents about what she did really drove that home. This is simply another face the consequences of your action situation. However, this exact situation is somewhat different. OP's partner took her back, but as she shared, the man is completely different. And I couldn't help but feel immensely irritated that OP tried to make things better after all of the damage was done. OP needs to leave this man alone. She will just make his now miserable life even worse. In my opinion, she doesn't deserve the opportunity to try and right her wrongs. But perhaps you think I'm being too harsh. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. There was one line that OP wrote that said, "I'm sure he's suffering as well because of me," like no shit. As you're all going to see, the comments are way more forgiving than I am. User BuckFLS said, "I appreciate your heartfelt remorse and your forthright honesty and bravery in confessing publicly here, hoping to help others. You have been through and are still going through a fire. I think we all feel your pain. And you own the pain and devastation you wrought on your husband. I believe you are a good person and deserve happiness. Forgiveness from yourself or your husband? I don't know. Maybe find a way to live without that and just do better, be better going forward. I think it's okay for you to have hope. I think you should work on yourself, stay in therapy, get fit, work on your career, pursue ambitions and interests, become the healthier, better you that you can be. It's okay to. And I bet you'll look up one day and realize you found love again, and that you deserve it. Good luck to you." User Astro Capri said, "I'm really devastated for you, and though I obviously don't know what it's like, I do know what it's like to betray the one you love most and want to spend your life with at the hands of your own issues. I'm not a psychiatrist, so maybe my advice doesn't have much merit, but for me, it was important to separate my diagnosed mental issues from what I did. Like, I made those decisions myself. I f***ed up bad and lost the only person I care about with my own choices, not my mental issues. I say this because it's really easy to blame yourself for having those mental conditions, for not getting them treated sooner, and point to them for the cause of your devastation. And although yes, they definitely do have a big part to play in our betrayal, you shouldn't place the blame on them because that's much more hurtful to yourself. It makes you feel like you weren't ever in control of yourself and may never be. You've obviously taken accountability for your actions and you're paying such a huge price for them, but I think it's important to center yourself when thinking back on it and not the conditions you never asked to have. I think it makes it easier to forgive yourself this way because you realize that those choices were your own only, but you can and have changed. You're a different person that doesn't want to hurt anyone again. By feeling bad about and blaming your conditions, you only tell yourself that you were a slave to them, and if only you never had them, you would never have hurt who you loved. Separating the two, you can see that you made bad choices, but most people do in life, and you want to change and be better and work on yourself. And you can see that your mental conditions don't have ownership over you, and you can treat them day by day, and you're really brave for doing so. I wish you the best. User E-Died Yas Thompson said, "Wow, incredibly heartbreaking but an amazing post. I was betrayed similarly to your description above. It hurts so bad, and honestly, I wouldn't wish this feeling on Satan himself. Reading your honesty is incredibly validating. It's obvious you have worked very hard thus far. Please continue to post on Reddit. You are helping people heal. Great work. Keep making the next right choice. I'm praying for you." User Venom said, "This is definitely a sad post. I'm late in getting to fully read it. The remorse you have seems more genuine than most I have read. One thing I have to disagree with is where you say it isn't true that you chose someone else over your husband. That's exactly what you did by having an affair. I have read your most recent post as well. I do hope your life improves and that you stay well.